UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military projects, false flag alien invasions, PSYOP, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join the discussion now on UAP Crossfire.
Well, don't all talk at once.
I know. I hate that when that happens.
Jeez, I can't understand a word either one of you guys are saying.
Howdy.
Do we even know who's leading this flight tonight?
I thought you were. I did it last week.
Me?
Yeah,
Not
you.
Me. Well, I can if I have to. But
Well, wait a minute. I believe I saw from the Padre that he did the write-up.
No,
I didn't
that was
do
for
that.
something else.
That
Well,
was Bill.
let's start over again. Hey, everybody.
Okay. We can do what the hell?
Welcome to UAP Crossfire. This is the show where four alpha males decide who's going to take the lead, I guess. So, welcome to the show. Here we are, four monkeys in a pot. And, well, I'm going to introduce everybody. I'm Chris DePerno, and
You were just dying to do this, Chris.
No, I wasn't.
Yes, he is. This is
here going. Wow.
passive. This is the passive aggressiveness of Chris showing up here.
It is. You know me. I always want to take command or something. That's that law enforcement Marine Corps in me. God, right now. Anyways, right below me, he's the man himself, Commander Cobra. It's good to have you back. You've been gone for a long time.
It seems that way, and I greatly enjoy returning and seeing all of you. And thank you so much for the kind words.
And we did miss you, Deuce.
We did miss
you, buddy.
Yeah, it just happens that when I have these missions off to the Mideast, it's a Thursday to Thursday kind of
Secret
exchange. So a 1 week takes out 2 weeks with you guys.
Secret.
But it's great to be back.
Man. Giving him a number. Now, anyways, over to my good side, top side in the corner there is the Padre. We call him the Padre. His real name is Dan Carlson. Hello, Dan. How are you?
Good evening. I am doing great here. A week ago, I was shivering 25 below, and now it's 64 above.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. We had
Black
gym shore
Hills.
weather here in Buffalo. Was 49, 50 and stuff. So it was really good.
Washed my car and everything today. I'm ready.
You are. And I got to tell you, this is the best guy all. Dandy Don Decker. I love him. You never know what's going to come out of his mouth. You never know what he's going to say. Except one thing that you can predict is he's going to say, you sons of bitches. Hello, Dan.
Hey, Chris, how's it going? I gotta upstage you guys. I'm sorry to do this, but hey, guys got to do what he's got to do.
At least it's the first time, Decker.
Yeah, 84 here today, gang. 84. I was out in the sun. Yes, I was. Got a little color in my cheeks.
Didn't you have to pick up poop bombs or something like that?
I did.
Oh,
I
okay.
did.
That's
I
an
did.
interesting hobby that you have.
Our little puppies left a bunch of love deposits out there. So
Yeah, you know, every time I call you, you're telling me you're picking up poop bombs in the yard. This dog must have one hell of a problem.
Two dogs. Two.
Two dogs. Okay. All right.
Everybody's a hobby.
I got to tell you, I don't know if we got a show tonight. Guess hasn't showed up yet. So I don't know what I can tell you, folks.
All right. Well, in the interim, I'd like to throw in there that I've seen a couple reports out that the Pentagon has officially disclosed that they are looking into the egg video.
Mm-hmm.
That is right.
Well, I think everyone in America should rest better tonight knowing that the Pentagon has announced that they are officially investigating the helicopter netted egg extraterrestrial vehicle video.
I'm waiting for Elon Musk to get over there with his accounting book. That's what I'm waiting for with the Pentagon. You bet. Let's find out where all those lost billions and billions of dollars went.
Is it true they never ever had a successful audit?
Well, the reports are over the last 10 plus years, they have not succeeded in an audit.
You know, and everybody says, "Oh, that's going to secret black ops projects." I don't know. I mean, but I sure like to at least have somebody go over there and count the beans.
Well, look,
I think there's going to be a lot of waste.
That last chairman of the Joint Chiefs was he was an Air Force guy, more concerned about DEI protocols than checking his bucks, okay? Pulling out the wallet, seeing where the money was. So they got rid of him. Now we'll see what Pete Hegseth is going to come up with. I kind of looking forward to that, to be honest.
You know, CC, you work pretty close with the military still now, right? Doing your aviation stuff and really knows about. Do you see a change in the military as far as what their feelings and stuff are?
Well, to some degree, yes. What I'm seeing more, because I'm more intimately connected with, is the GS, government servant, government service side of it, going through the various ups and downs of the changes that are coming out, the return to office work orders. There's some of it I find a little bit clumsy on the part of the president and his team, how they're doing it, and I have some critiques of how the Air Force is handling to it. But overall, I should say the military, Air Force is obviously where I'm closely associated, but I see the other services. And I don't think that anyone should have been surprised that this was going to happen. The people that were running for the office, one was making it very clear what they expected to happen. But I'll give you a good case in point. You want people to return to the office and to fulfill the orders, yet we can't figure out how to reopen daycare enrollments because they're like just like medical insurance. There's an enrollment period, and that's how they're able to hire people and have that. And that's an essential part of work is daycare and having people available to do that. But we can't seem to figure out how to just, okay, this is a little out of the ordinary. Something's changed. We have to reopen. Come in with emergency actions, powers, and directives to get this part of it covered. So we go through a lengthy hand-wringing that I don't get. I obviously am a big fan of the return to a primal focus on the role of what the military is, which is, close with the enemy and defeat them. And I've always been kind of an old proponent of that. Decker, knock it off. I can see you. If you're going to keep making faces like that, I'm going to call you out. We're working on that.
Gang, what he really meant to say was the military has two roles. That's kill the enemy, break up their shit. Forget all this nice crap. Didn't see any of it when I was in Southeast Asia. So, hey, okay.
I got a question for the Padre.
Yes, sir.
Dan.
Yeah.
It seems like this president is trying to be as transparent as possible. Tonight they released some of the Epstein files. There's word, I don't know how true this is, that the FBI might have misplaced some of them. But I guess Kash Patel says, no, we'll find them or somebody's going to find another job. So they're kind of stonewalling a little bit on that. But they did release some Epstein files. They say they're going to release the JFK assassination.
How about Hunter's laptop? Did they ever find that?
Yeah, it's in a plastic bag and somewhere's way back in the FBI inventory file somewheres. And hopefully nobody will bring that up because that's going to be real embarrassing. But actually, Dan, I wanted to talk to you and ask you, do you think this president will actually release the UFO files? What's really happening with ufology?
I think that he wants to, because the people who are studying the subject, people like us, have let it be known that we are ready. And I do think that the public is ready. I think that where the problem is going to come once they get to this committee led by Representative Paulina Luna, that they're going to have to go over the usual song and dance about sources and methods and not wanting to compromise technology that we have. So I think that rather than a big wave of disclosure and a sudden revelation, it's going to kind of dribble out a little bit at a time. And at the other side of that is, within the UFO community now, we have some of the bigger names in this field who are saying that they're prepared to do a what they call a catastrophic disclosure. Basically,
what do you mean by a catastrophic disclosure?
Yeah, where it's not released by government officials, but by ufologists who would have the key piece of evidence to convince everybody that this is an experience that cannot no longer be ignored and we're no longer alone. I think that, the hype leading up to the Mr. Coulthard's interview with Mr. Baker, people were thinking, well, maybe that's it. And it was, well, personally, I found it underwhelming. I think that we all were.
Well, you know what? It's a perfect time to bring in our guest, and I want you to ask him that question. Let's bring in Steve Bassett.
Howdy, folks.
Hi, Steve. How are you tonight?
Hello, Stephen.
I'm doing fine. I'm going to go James Carville tonight.
You're going to do a little James Carville?
Yeah, that's what he does. He's been doing this so long, he just wears whatever the hell he wants.
You know what everybody calls him, don't you, Stephen? The lizard.
The wizard?
Lizard.
Oh, lizard.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that works. He used to be called. I think he used to be called the wizard, but he hasn't made very good calls lately, so he's no longer a wizard.
No, not wizard.
Lizard.
Anyway, Steve, what we were talking about is, do we think with this presidency, the way he's trying to be transparent with all these other files, how do you think he's going to do with the UFO files? And do you see disclosure coming with him?
Well, okay. I think Donald Trump's going to be the disclosure president, and soon. Oh yeah, yeah.
Do you think anybody was going to stop him?
Of the 14 presidents that have been presidents since Roswell, he's the one they couldn't stop. In the past, I would speculate that. Well, first of all, every president has known about the ET presence. The idea that you get to be president, nobody kind of just takes you off the side and says, that's real. No, of course, everyone knew. But only 2 even made an effort to go at it. Carter, on his own, he wanted to do it. Clinton didn't want to. Both of them got stonewalled very quickly. That was it. They've all known. And I think in most cases, even in the case of Carter, in a sense, and Clinton, a number of the generals of the DOD, some of the FBI people, whatever the hell, CIA people, are kind of say, Mr. President, look, this is not the right time yet. It's a national security matter. There's a lot of unknowns. Best if we kind of stayed back on this and take care of the other stuff. We'll follow this for you. And I can imagine those presidents going, yes, of course. You all are the experts in national security. You know all the threats to the country. Trump would basically say, screw this. I'm going to do it. Right? And that's the difference. And it's a big difference. It's not the only thing. 7 years of preparation has gone into preparing whoever was president right now to do this. And it was moving fast enough for Biden to possibly do it. The platform was pretty much there. Most everything was in place.
Stephen, Biden couldn't find his own roll of toilet paper.
Yeah, I hear you. You don't like him. I don't talk in extremes like that, and I'm apolitical. Okay. But
this is covered by politics. It's always been covered by politics from day one. Look, you and I have known each other for over 30 years, going all the way back to the days when my wife and I were publishing UFO magazine. I've been around this field now, closing in on close to 40 years, okay, which is hard to believe. But in all that time that I've known you, you have been the most outspoken advocate for disclosure. And the part that really zeroed in on me is when Barack Obama was elected in 2008, took the Oval Office, 2009, and you were all over the roadmap that this was the disclosure president. What the hell happened?
My exact wording, we shall leave to historians to parse, but the role of an activist in a activist movement is to help keep people's eye on the ball, keep them motivated to keep pushing, because it's not easy and it can take decades, and pointing out the opportunities, right, when they appear, to possibly break through. You cannot be part of a leadership or whatever the hell you want to call it of an activist movement by constantly telling people, we really need to get this done. There's a chance in hell it'll happen. Well, what else? Let's give it a shot. No, can't do that. So in the case of the Obama administration, well, there's a lot of story there. All right, but to put it in a few words, why I was now leading into it again, feeling positive, is that I was fully aware, of course, of the Rockefeller Initiative in great detail, where there was an effort to get the Clinton administration to really push this issue, get the files, et cetera, however you wanted to call it. It was backed by money. Lawrence Rockefeller went on for 3 years. There were studies, there were reports. We have all the documents proving this. So I knew all about that. I knew that ultimately the government stonewalled it, right? I also knew that the Department of Defense was not happy about it at all. They didn't like him when he arrived, and they liked him even less when he started nosing around or having Podesta nose around for those files. And so it may have played a role in the fact that they attacked him from every side. They attacked him, the wife, the daughter, the dog, the cats, everybody. Every scandal they can come up with. Probably got cooperation from the CIA, God bless them. Point is that there was an effort there. And so they stop in 96 because he's got to run for president. We'll never know what would have happened if he had, we will never know what would happen if the Lewinsky scandal had not finally brought him down, right? Which is, I totally blame on him, but it actually gutted any chance he had of taking major political actions. I mean, they had him, okay. But Al Gore was going to be the next president. Al Gore was vice president during the Rockefeller Initiative and was well aware of it and so forth. He was well thought of by the DOD. He was on key committees. He was not Clinton, but he didn't win. Okay, and so we get 8 years of George Bush.
Well, here's the dirty little secret about the UFO conundrum. Okay, as I see it, and believe me, I've been in this up to my eyebrows. Okay, trying to dig the dirt out. Back in 1947, when the Roswell event happened, I am, and not only me, quite a few other people are convinced that something was discovered with that wreck, that crash, something that the powers that be, I don't care what you call them, maybe it was MJ-12, maybe it was a group of another name, who knows? But the people involved with it were some of the most important, powerful men in the United States at that time. Discovered something that they were terrified would ever become publicly known. Now, today, this so-called core secret is surrounded by an SAP, the Special Access Program. I wrote a paper a little over a year ago on the very disclosure idea, and I am convinced, I was convinced then when I wrote the paper, I'm still convinced today, that whatever that core secret is will never be revealed, ever, until such time as the extraterrestrials, if in fact that's what they are, land and do it themselves. Because whatever that is, people have, as you well know, people have died, people have been destroyed, people's careers have been shattered, marriages have been broken apart. Look at what happened to David Grush. There was a guy who had no firsthand knowledge, none, but he was told, according to his testimony in Congress that he swore to, he was told these things, and he always said I was a second or third hand witness. And what did they do to him? Some son of a bitch released his medical files because the guy is somewhat on the autistic spectrum and tried to crush him. And he had been allowed to speak by his superiors to go to Congress. So you can't convince me that these people will ever let go of that secret. How do you respond?
My job isn't to convince you of anything, Don. My job is to pursue the activist goal, the prize of this movement, which I think everybody in this field pretty much has wanted, going all the way back to Donald Keogh, and that is the formal confirmation of this non-human technologically advanced presence, which is the safe way to put it. NHI, second. As far as I'm concerned, they're extraterrestrial. There's plenty of evidence for that, but whatever. That is my job. It's not to prove it, because in my view, it was proven long ago, and it's been proven many times over. Now, the details, of course, remain to be sorted out later, but the idea that we have this non-human technologically advanced presence proven 100 times over. So my job's not to prove that. And my job isn't even to prove that this witness is righteous and this witness is righteous, or this piece of evidence is no. I'm not a researcher. I'm an activist. My job is to keep the public and the people involved focused and moving forward, right? Knowing that until we have formal confirmation by the heads of state, and I assure you, it won't stop with our president, other heads of state will come in, and this thing has been essentially freed from its prison, then we're going to be able to much more easily resolve all of the thousands of controversies and questions, speculations, conspiracies that have built up over 70 years. But until then, if we don't keep the eye on the prize, which is getting the confirmation from the heads of state, then we'll go round and round in circles about every witness, every episode, every theory, or what have you, until we die. It's exactly what the president wants us to do, or the government rather wants us to do. And so, the thing that I can discuss and debate every aspect of the field if someone wants to, but my what I can bring to the table is 28 years of focusing on the politics, pretty much completely, and engaging it from that point of view. And in the last 7 years, it really heated up. And in the last 2 years, it got white hot. And now it is just really churning. And we're very close to what I believe will allow, and in this case, our president, it didn't have to be this president, it could have been a number of presidents, to confirm it. And until we get confirmation, we're not in the post-disclosure world. Colonel Nell saying there's an ET presence is not formal confirmation. Neither is it from Tim Burchett, right, or Elizondo, or who was the other person? So many have been doing that. That's not formal confirmation. It's important. It got a press, but until it comes from the president, it does not free us up to really go after this issue. It doesn't free up the money, doesn't free up the media to an even greater extent. We still are in the truth embargo era where you can't really get the money and you're not quite believed and all that kind of crap. That's been going on for 7 decades. I believe that's going to end, and I can make a case for it this evening. I'm happy to do it.
Well, you and I think you and I would agree on this, okay? Uh-huh. It's not the government, it's not the military, it's not the intelligence community that has their thumb on this. It's private industry. Lockheed or whomever has the physical material. And I'm sure you're more than aware of the Admiral Thomas Wilson, which incidentally he has totally denied, former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, okay, who was coerced by, among others, Stephen Greer, Billy Cox, Edgar Mitchell, to do an inside look, and he was eventually steered toward these avionic corporations, and he contacted them. They said they couldn't talk to him. He went out to a secure skiff here on the West Coast, and he went in, he asked his questions. The security supervisor pulled out his bigot list, Wilson's name was not on it. And he said, sorry, can't talk. Do you have a nice flight back? Now, if the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, the military CIA, in effect, couldn't get into that, and private industry has it, who the hell does have the final word? And I agree with you about Donald Trump. That guy is a bull, can be a bull in a china shop. But this might be bigger than he can handle.
Let's see. Well, first, I don't agree with you on the first premise. I happen to believe that the truth embargo has people that have managed it from the beginning. I think the initial group of 12 very competent people was MJ12, whatever the hell people want to call it. And these individuals were given the difficult task of how to manage this problem in the very earliest days. In terms of what they got at Roswell, what I know that they got at Roswell, with certainty in my mind, is a non-human craft, non-human design built craft, and non-humans pilots. Some, most dead, one alive, I believe. And I would suggest that alone, just that, is more than enough for the government to go into, how would you say, the full national security mode, right? And so they put out a press release, a famous press release, one of the great moments in history. Blanchard greenlighted, put it out. But fortunately for the U.S. government and its future on this issue, they hadn't found the second wreck yet. So they didn't have to know about the bodies. They just had the fact that there was a crash. It was one of those vehicles, they assumed. And so they put out a press release. We have a saucer, which it's important that they actually called it that. If they had gotten to the bodies too, would Blanchard have greenlighted a press release in that case? I'm thinking no. But nevertheless, it went out, and that starts the ball rolling. We have a saucer. And I have the two front page articles right in front of me. The next day, of course, General Ramey empties Roswell saucer. So one of the things the government had to do early on in this truth embargo is get rid of saucer, right? Let's get that hell out of here and get into something else, and UFO took its place. But that was more than enough. And the reason why it was more than enough is that you must consider the time frame. So Roswell occurs in July of 42. The government was already aware that some sort of plasma technology of some kind had been following airplanes around in all the theaters. Wasn't shooting planes down, wasn't a threat, but definitely was not ours and was being reported. But there was a war going on, and so they just put a pin in that. So they knew about that. They may have had a crash prior to 47. There's discussions about that and so forth, could be true. But I know about 47 for sure, July. So let's just start with that because that's solid. The other two, I hope to know more about. And so when in 47, they knew by July that the Soviets were going to test an atom bomb. They were working on a hydrogen bomb. They had German scientists to deal with the missile technology, and they were going to build missiles, put bombs on them, and we'd already established that we were the new enemy, right? Iron Curtain across Europe, the whole 9 yards. And so they've got a non-human craft with technology that could be weaponized. They've got bodies confirming that there's non-humans out there, almost certainly from another planet. They're facing a coming, amounts to a nuclear arms race with the Soviet Union, right, which proved to be everything they thought it would be, ending up with 9 countries, 86,000 nukes stocked by the mid-1980s. And so the idea that, let's just let the people know that we're not alone in the universe without being able to what are the unknown unknowns that you can't possibly calculate that would inject into this situation. And so when Truman was told, probably by General at God, his name escapes me. My memory's getting really bad. When he was told they got this, I think he informed Ramsey to is it Ramsey? General Ramsey? Yeah, I can't remember. Ramey, yeah, that's right. He informed him, look, let's step back from this. Let's just hold on. Let's see what we've got. I don't think he said, General Ramey, nobody will ever know about this and blah. No. But he said, let's hold off. So Ramey holds a press conference, gets it pushed off to the side, and then they step back and think, well, what are we going to do about this? All right. And what we know that they did was practically nothing in a sense, in the public sense. They didn't know to what extent this phenomenon was going to escalate or just go away. So they kind of watched. And after Roswell, while there were sightings, there weren't other crashes, as far as we know, and they were kind of gliding. It's like, okay, they're gliding. And now understand that they glided into the 50s, and thus the Korean War starts. And so we still have a very intense national security situation. One war just ended, another one is starting. The Chinese eventually come into it. All of this is factoring into what do we do about the ET issue? And the decision, I think, was let's just don't do anything. And just, it will be kind of an interesting thing. People will report, we'll just deny, whatever, no problem. And then, almost exactly 5 years after Roswell, our ET friends decided to put on a show. More of those same plasma-type balls that were seen in the war, the Foo Fighters. And they flew them over the Capitol, where I'm at right now, for something like 13 days. They couldn't do a damn thing about it, right? There weren't millions of cameras thousands of cameras on the ground with film it. So, but it scared the hell out of them. They realized that they're not going to go away. We cannot control what they do. We can't stop it, can't shoot them down. And so that's when they got really serious, 5 years on. And they pulled together the CIA panel headed by Robertson. Study this, and it's a pretty sizable little report, and tell us what we should do. And so all of these white, elderly, but very, very smart men got together and decided, here's what you should do. It's not a threat itself, but the public's growing interest in it is a threat, and we need to deal with that. And so from that point forward, the truth embargo was kind of formalized as they go forward, and they were prepared to do whatever it took to keep the truth of that out of the national security threatening issues that they were dealing with. And they got very good at it. And so 78 years after Roswell, the truth embargo still stands. And in a sense, Truman was right, because the Cold War and the nuclear arms race didn't just get bad, it got awful. We nearly had a nuclear war on several occasions. And so the first real chance that we might see a major break in this does not take place until the Soviet Union collapses, gives up 14 republics, outlaws of the Communist Party on Christmas Day, brings back religion, and goes capitalist, right? And that's like 91, okay, in 92. And that was our first big opportunity to maybe really now address this, because there's a whole new era. Things could go well, detente, whatever. And that's why Rockefeller moved in and put the money behind a significant effort to get Clinton to go there. And Podesta was his point man. And his wife, Hillary, was involved in it. So was Panetta involved in it. So this was an attempt. But the truth embargo was much stronger. In other words, the time might have been right, but the Department of Defense wanted nothing to do with this. And so they blocked it. All right. So which brings me to the answer to your earlier question. When Obama comes in, I'm thinking, okay, the Democrats are back in power. Is Obama going to be brought into this? Might he engage it? What's going to happen? Don't know. What happened was this. He hires Podesta to be his chairman, his transition, the head of his transition. Podesta was fully involved in the Rockefeller Initiative. Then he brings in Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. She was fully involved in the Rockefeller Initiative. He brings in Leon Panetta to be the CIA director. He was fully involved in the Rockefeller Initiative. And so there was no question in my mind that he was, by them alone, tipped off to this issue, their efforts to deal with it, and now it was his opportunity to possibly pick up that mantle. Now, we'll never know to what degree he considered that, right? But when the campaign was underway, I thought she was going to win. In fact, she was way ahead, and I was pushing out media trying to connect her to the ET issue, which was legitimate. But before it could get anything going there, she made a couple of major mistakes, and she was gone. And then Obama made those decisions. So the Rockefeller Initiative basically walked in his door. Now, he's a new president. He's young. He's dynamic, right? He wants us to have hope. He's got all the Rockefeller Initiative people there. they could have helped him be the disclosure president, which would have been pretty interesting. But we subsequently learned that just being the first black president and all the things that he had to deal with, which is a financial crisis that was basically handed right to him to say, hey, deal with this guy, that was enough. And so he did not go there, except in the very end of his term, he brought in Podesta to be an advisor out of nowhere for reasons that weren't clear. All right. And so let's just say that I had optimism during the Obama period for that reason, and I feel cool with that. And then, of course, as we move into the next campaign, things got even more interesting. But overall, we did not cross the Rubicon until October, December of 2017. It was the To the Stars Academy group. Forget the To the Stars Academy and all that stuff. That's fine. But the group that came out with it as the directors, with their as the whatever the chief people with the bio and everything else. That was the one
guy that I found most astounding was Christopher Mellon.
Sure.
Who had been an undersecretary of state for intelligence. Mm-hmm. That guy, and look, Stephen, in the military, when I was in the military, I dealt with intelligence. Okay? And in all the years, and I butted heads with people at the Pentagon. Oh my God, when we did the Star Wars issue, I butted heads with people at NASA. Okay? I never in my life would have thought that somebody of that stature, that rarefied atmosphere, would come out onto the public stage of UFOs. But then I thought more about it. Somebody gave that guy the nod for whatever reason. Okay? He didn't do this just on his own. He couldn't have.
No,
he couldn't have. No. Somebody said, yeah, go ahead. Now, I got to tell you, there are some other people involved with that To the Stars Academy. The engineer from Lockheed Skunk Works. What was his name? I believe it was Skinner.
No, Steve Justice.
Justice. Thank you. Okay, the fact that he was there, never said a hell of a lot. Then we had the usual suspects. Hal Puthoff. I wouldn't be surprised if Puthoff showed up in my bathroom someday. Okay? He was around everywhere, and he didn't talk a hell of a lot. You know, I paid attention. Being a cop for all the years I was a cop, I learned to read people. And there was something that I found interesting. Now, as far as Lou Elizondo, I still haven't completely made up my mind about him. But Harry Reid, he was pals with Reid. Reid got them the money, $22 million roughly. A lot of it went to Bob Bigelow. Okay. This whole thing, I got to tell you, it stinks to me.
One man's stink is another man's perfume.
Yeah.
Let me give you my interpretation as best I know of what happened. Here is how I view the To the Stars Academy's emergence. I first learned about it in March 16. I think it was March 16.
Tom DeLonge?
Of 2000.
Rock and roll?
2016. It was 16? Yeah, 2016. I learned about it in 2016. George Knapp did a 3-hour interview with him. And the first thing I noted about that interview was George was just over the top about it. This is a major deal. This is huge, and so forth, which is a little uncharacteristic for George. And then comes Tom DeLonge, who I really didn't know. I mean, when I was told he was the lead of a band called whatever the hell.
Blink 182.
Yeah, Blink 182. I go, oh, okay, I've heard of that band, but that's it. Never listened to music. But I did know. Let me rephrase that. I didn't listen to his music, but I knew who he was. Why? Because Tom DeLonge was a big supporter of Greer in the early 90s. He took him around. He introduced him to people in some cases and so forth. And he was really into the issue. And what was happening is he was about to reemerge. And so I listened to this thing for 3 hours, and they don't really get the specifics. He's talking at length. First, he talks about how he sought out the opportunity to meet with people. He had the money to fly anywhere he wanted, pay whatever the entrance fee was, go in, have a cocktail and some hors d'oeuvres, and start buttonholing people that he thought may be important, trying to get them to listen to some ideas that he had, which is, hey, that's activism. And one day they said, let's go talk. All right. Anyway, he was referring to stuff like that. Something was going to get done. He talked about books and stuff that might get published. So I knew, and it was clear that whatever was going on had been going on for at least a year, meaning it went back to at least mid or maybe March of 2015, maybe even before that. All right. And so I put a pin in that and said, well, this is interesting. Let's see what happens. 30 days later, the book he was talking about, right, Secret Machines with a K, was published. And I realized, my God, whatever's going on there is really going on. Okay. And so I followed that as best I could. We didn't hear much about it. The next time I got any hard stuff about what was coming down was, what can I say? It was the Times, was the emails that were leaked by WikiLeaks out of Podesta's email. They'd already leaked emails from the Democratic National Committee, which caused a lot of problems for the campaign and hurt her, Clinton's campaign. But then they got his emails and they put those out. They put those out in a very aggressive way. And this is one of the reasons why Assange ended up staying in jail for another 10 years. He crossed the line. And so rather than dump and go like, we've done it, dump, you guys take it, meaning the journalists, the newspapers, no. He put them out in 5,000 email tranches each day with maybe one or two breaks leading directly up to the election to get the maximum impact. And in those emails, 50,000, were 92 UFO emails, which are on my website right now with commentary and have been ever since. And in those emails, we realized that they'd been engaging Podesta, who was essentially co-chairman of her campaign, engaging them for some time, meetings, did a little filming, whatever. And so it was clear that whatever I was being told back in March 16th, 2016, was now manifesting again as just before the election. And I said, this is big. Okay, now, what happened, of course, is that she lost. And whatever was in the works sort of was stalled. The To the Stars Academy website was still up, right? But I'm sorry. I got twisted there. Forgive me. Whatever's going to happen was tabled. We have a new president, totally different ball game. That project was predicated on her winning, and I'll get back to that in a second. And so what happened is I went to the UK to chill, which was fun. I had a place I could stay. I got a chance to go to Moscow, give an interview, so it wasn't a total waste. And I'm just, what's going to happen? And what happened? I'm in the UK, and I read that, they just went public. To the Stars Academy just put up a website. And I went to that website, and I saw those 10 people, and I said, this is it. We just crossed the Rubicon. Now it's just a matter of getting the army inside Rome. This was a huge deal. Many people probably didn't even get how important it was. Why should they? I've been focused on it for almost 15 years at that point. So I saw it. So I said, this is a big deal. But how big a deal? And we found out just 2 months later, when those two stories were walked into the New York Times, vetted and published with videos, and all of that stuff just dumps out mid-December 2017. And so I realized then how big a deal. And the best assessment that I have here, because we do not have the origin story of this, that's for later, maybe given to historians. We do not have the origin story, which I believe took place over a couple of years. And what was taking place, the best way I can assess it is this. From day one, all the way back to 1947, a lot of people in our government knew there was an ET presence. As you move forward, more new and more new and more new, but some of them died off. But then, of course, the research and magazines like Don's and Bill Burns and all that other stuff, and all the enormous amount of work that was done by the citizen science activists, journalists and so forth, building up this massive case as well as massive archive of information. More and more people in the government knew. And so the number of people within government that knew the ET presence was real was growing. But at some point, The number of people in the U.S. government that knew the ET presence was real, but that the truth embargo was no longer acceptable or no longer appropriate, was also growing. And I think it hit a critical mass sometime around late night 2014, maybe 15. And so meetings were kind of held off campus, maybe over a cocktail at the lounge, whatever the hell. And they're talking, and a group of them decided that they were going to take direct action, that they were going to come forward together. There were probably some people that were maybe going to do it, backed out, but there were plenty of people that probably knew that this was happening. It was not formal. This is a private deal, all right? And so ultimately, it was 10 that came forward, and their goal was basically to end the truth embargo. Now, why was Tom DeLonge involved? Probably because they needed a CEO who wasn't a former spy, right? Somebody that was, nice, likable, had a lot of, followers or whatever the hell.
Had a lot of money
connected
too.
To the government, okay? And he could front the initial cost. And the idea he had about creating a company, multimedia, going to do research, going to sell books and everything else, going to be a what they call a public benefit company, actually raise stock. That was good. Why? Because these people, every one of them knew that their financial prospects post-retirement were not going to get better when they came forward on this issue. And so it was a, win-win. And so they used this vehicle to come out. All right. So then it was a question of what was going to happen next. And what happened next seemed to logically fit. All right. For instance, several of them stayed back. They simply came out and stayed back. Their name and bio was up there, but they weren't getting out. They weren't doing podcasts. That's okay. Because for any number of reasons, they couldn't do that, didn't want to do that. But there were three people in particular that were going to be the point of the spear. And it wasn't Tom DeLonge. It was Christopher Mellon, Luis Elizondo, and Gary Nolan. Christopher Mellon is the political guy. Elizondo is basically the defense military guy. And Nolan is the scientist, right? The three major areas that you need to address if you're going to build a platform for disclosure. And so they came forward and engaged the world. Elizondo in a major way, Mellon a little less so, but certainly the politics of it. And then, of course, Nolan kind of held off and didn't jump in until a little bit later, which made sense.
Didn't he say he was an experiencer, Steve?
Semi-Van says he's an experiencer. Not. I don't believe Nolan has said that.
Okay.
And so in the first 2 years, and the other thing is this, they get a lot of credit for making the decision in October in the new presidency, because I think they took some time to see how's it going to go, what's going to happen, but ultimately they decided we got to do this. And so they did it, knowing it was going to be a different thing altogether. I believe the original plan, and I've said this publicly hundreds of times, and not a single person in the group has contacted me and said, you got it wrong. I believe the original plan is they fully were aware of the Rockefeller Initiative. They were aware that the Clintons and Podesta and Bill Clinton were having to speak to this issue during the campaign. That Podesta had been involved in the issue ever since Clinton left office. And one of the reasons that this was happening is because I was in D.C. driving the hell out of the media. My publicist and I were pushing this story at the media. You've got to write about the connection between Hillary Clinton and the UAP issue. And they did. They wrote 400 articles, forcing them to speak publicly or address the issue directly on at least 11 occasions, each one generating even more articles. 400 articles specifically connecting her to the issue during the campaign. Didn't cost her a single vote. Right. So but they still wouldn't go full out. So the plan was she would win the presidency. They would announce the To the Stars Academy during the transition period. Right. While she's president-elect. All these articles have happened. Now, when she wins, then that even gets more exposure. She then goes into the White House with the press following behind her going, what about the UAP? What about the UAP? But one of the reasons is they would have launched the To the Stars Academy before she was even in the White House. And all of that follows into the White House. She's the disclosure president in the spring of 2017, and that all blows up when she loses. They wait 8 months and give it a shot anyway, but the situation was totally different. All right. But they did it. Right. And they're all heroes, and every one of them should get a Medal of Freedom. Now, what did they do? They did what you had to do. You have to build a platform for a president to stand on if that president is going to tell the world that we're not alone in the universe and have it go well. All right. And so the way they began that process is that Elizondo particularly is engaging the public and doing interviews. They put a little show up on history in order to how to get things out there and connect with the public. That's fine. Mellon, on the other hand, though he's writing some stuff in the papers, he goes to Capitol Hill because of his background. And so Mellon was the one chiefly responsible for setting up the behind the scenes meetings in those first 2 years. 2019 to 2020, right? At 17, fall of 17 to fall of 18 to fall of 19, rather, leading into 220. We do not know how many witnesses, how many people he took up the Hill to sit with a member of Congress and talk about this issue confidentially. Not in a classified setting, but rather confidentially. This stays in this office. We're not going to give an interview to the press. I want to know what you have to say. And so he was educating. And by saying educating the Congress, he was educating the right committees. Senate Intel, Senate Armed Services, House Intel, House Armed Services. That's where the focus was. How many, we do not know. But it could have been dozens. It could have been scores. And so he is educating during that 2-year period. Elizondo's out working with the public. And of course, the rest of us are doing our thing. And this goes on for 2 years to establish a basis for Congress to act. And that's exactly what happened. When in July, roughly, of 2020, Marco Rubio, having probably had a number of meetings and whatever the hell else, Marco Rubio, a Republican and the chairman of the Intel Committee of the Senate, puts a little bill into the COVID Act, which was going to be an easy thing because nobody was going to block the COVID $2 trillion relief bill, and slips that baby in, the first piece of legislation ever on this issue, and it goes and is signed by Biden at the end of that year. All right. First piece of legislation. Fine. Now the Congress is formally kind of involved. All right. May 17th, 2022, after one piece of legislation, two. The first hearing since 1968 held by Gillibrand in the Senate. Right. It was a hearing Moultrie and Bray. Since then, there have been 8 hearings, 2 of which were major. All right. All of this is building the platform. And so Gillibrand sponsors the second bill, which is a very substantial bill, right? In the 2022 NDAA. And that established the UAP task force. We get a third bill and then a fourth bill. And all the time this is going on, the media is diving in between late 2017 and now. I have logged in on my website. You can go read every single one, 7,000 mainstream professional journalist articles on the UAP subject and everything that's been unfolding. 7,000. And in that 7,000, you can probably find 10 to 15 that are, how would you say, debunking. All right. So the stigma fell away. UFO came back into play as we're moving forward. This is what has been happening. Now, every person's role in this is complicated. Until historians get in there and start interviewing all these people in a safe way, we're never going to know all the details. Why did Justice step back? I can think of a number of reasons for that. But the fact that he just put himself out was incredible. He didn't have to do anything. Why? Because the moment that Steve Justice put his photo and bio up the Tuesday Star's website in 2017, he completely confirmed Rich. We already have the technology to take ET home. He confirmed that, of course, the defense contractors like Lockheed have been working on crash vehicles for God knows how long, and they're having a lot of fun. He didn't have to do that. That was a big risk for him. And I'll bet you Steve Justice took a lot of grief over that, because that's not political. That's economic. He's exposing Lockheed Martin to exactly what they were afraid of, which is eminent domain declaration by Schumer in 2023. But in any event, he did his thing. He stepped back. God bless him. All right. So this thing continues to move forward. Now, those that are not following it, who have not read those 7,000 articles, that don't have the history of this going back to 47 or know about the Rockefeller Initiative. I got 1,000-page document sets of the Rockefeller Initiative confirmation sitting right up on top of that shelf. They don't get it. My job is to get it. My job is to put the larger picture together, not get dragged into the weeds with this, that, and everything else, but keep the larger picture in focus so people can understand and move forward with it. We have made more progress in the last 5 years than in the previous 73 years. All right. We are at a place most people 50 years ago could not even dream of. And so, okay, so we got 4 pieces of legislation. We've had 8 hearings. Things are moving along very nicely. Witnesses are now coming forward so much we can't vet them fast enough as we're moving forward. And so the question is, how is it going to play out? What are going to be the factors? Well, the number one factor was the new presidency and what that was going to do. All right. But before that, you had the previous president. So first you have the Biden situation, then you have the Trump situation. And they're very, very different. The situation, the Biden situation, was roughly along these lines. Joe Biden certainly knows about the ET presence. But when he comes into the presidency in that election, it is not at the top of his list. He is coming in with a whole range of stuff. The political chaos is growing rapidly. The Democratic Party is in deep trouble. And so it wasn't something that he was going to force. But meanwhile, the other stuff is happening, right? And so it's pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And it was very possible Biden could have been the disclosure president, right? It's possible, particularly if the UAP Disclosure Act had not been cut in half during the reconciliation. But it was, but nevertheless, Schumer came right back and said, we're not done, we're going to resubmit it. And then the pushback began, the first real open pushback that I recall. And it wasn't hard. We know that the defense contractors pushed back against that bill, putting their people up on the Hill, convincing major players like O'Connell and others, got that bill. For political reasons? No, for monetary reasons. They envision making trillions of dollars in that technology. And so they pushed back, it was obvious, but they can't win, all right? And here is a perfect example of why they can't win. Because here is the sequence, and this may be the most important, I think, group of months of this 7-year period from the historical standpoint. Here is the sequence, all right? June 5th, 2023, out of nowhere, we learned there's going to be an interview and an article and debrief all about David Grush. I was at Contact in the Desert, and we watched, 200 of us watched the Coulthard interview, and we're all cheering and clapping. It was pretty intense, all right? And so that was kind of a big deal. Then we read the debrief article, and we realized what had happened is that someone with a substantial military and intelligence background who was working for the UAP task force and imperfectly in a position to get firsthand testimony from people because that was his job, had gotten information and tried to handle it in an appropriate way. And unfortunately, there were a lot of people that didn't want him to do that. And so after he went to the Intel committee and started talking, they got on his case. I don't know the details, but they pissed him off. And so he then went to the Inspector General. And when he went to the Inspector General, he told, and they've admitted this, he told the
Steve,
Inspector
I'm going to
General,
stop you right there because we got to go to break. But let's continue this right after the.
Oh, I just had a hernia. That I wasn't ready for that stuff. All right. Tell your stuff.
We'll be back right after this commercial. Okay, we are back with our great guest, Steve Bassett. Steve, you were talking about the intelligence communities, and before you got that hernia.
So I'm going to finish this story that is going to be prepares you for the rest of it, which is what's happened in the last 14 months.
Go for it.
But and not, some people don't know this. Grush tells the Inspector General, I think it was McCullough. It was the other guy, the Inspector General at the time. Oh, McCullough represented him to the Inspector General at the time, and McCullough was the previous Inspector General to the intelligence community, to give you an idea the level this was being played on. And so he tells them exactly who gave him that information from the USAPs. In other words, the first-hand guys. And I happen to think he told some of the Intel staff people that, right? So it's not that he's the only one knows he talked to. Right? Yeah, he's secondhand, but they know. They may have talked to them, they may not, but they know who they are. And so at some point, they just might get subpoena. Who knows? But that is the level at which this went. And so there is zero possibility that Grush made anything up at all, right? Because if he had, he would have been crucified. All right, because they had the power to go and check everything he said. And so, but that doesn't mean they're going to go public with it. It just means that they green-lighted him on. Okay, fine. So this was a major deal. He comes forward on June the 5th. This was a switch, right, that got flipped because, well, as history will recall, he is the first person that ever, I think, took an oath in front of Congress and said, we have non-human tech and non-human biologics. All right. That's a switch. Okay. Boom. So now the question is, it's been flipped. What's going to happen next? It's very interesting. It's June the 5th, right? Just 39 days later, after Grush says we have non-human tech, non-human bodies in the hand of, with the defense contractors and possibly within other government facilities, Schumer makes his move. Apparently, over those 39 days, he and Rounds and some staffers got together and decided to write the ultimate bill. There had already been 3. This would be it, right? And so he announces it publicly 39 days after Grush on July the 14th. Boy, landed like a bomb. And I'm listening to this and I'm going, oh, this is fantastic. All right. And then I learned the name of the bill, the name of the act, the UAP Disclosure Act. Hello. All right. Wow. And so this is fabulous. Right. And this is July the 14th. They put it up on the Senate site on the 17th of July. And guess what? It got passed by the Senate. But just 12 days later, possibly because it's kind of connected, is when the Senate subcommittee, the House Oversight Subcommittee brings in Grush and puts him under oath, along with Graves and Fravor, who are the wingmen. All right. Just think, June the 5th to July the 16th, Grush lands, boom. All right. Schumer steps in as the Senate Majority Leader with the ultimate bill. And then the first hearing since the first substantive hearing since 68 happens in the House Oversight Subcommittee in the span of just that time. But it's better than that, because if Schumer had introduced that bill and not mentioned eminent domain, it still would have been huge. But when he said at the end of his presentation, this bill will include eminent domain over non-human tech and non-human bodies in the possession of private corporations or private people, the government will have the right to exercise it. It's a preference. And that I just couldn't believe it. I almost fell out of my chair, right? The Senate Majority Leader, member of the Gang of 8, just said, we want eminent domain under this bill of non-human tech and non-human bodies, which of course you don't need if there's no non-human tech and non-human bodies, which means that he just stepped forward to back up Grush, who was getting a lot of crap, right? Still getting death threats. And he's saying, yeah, he's telling you the truth. And now I want eminent domain over this non-human tech, non-human bodies. And here is where we get to they can't win. All right. They're I'm sure over at Lockheed and all these other places, they're ripping their hair out like, I did once. Sure. And having a fit. And they're in the damn dining room. Nobody's hungry. They're pissed as hell. And they say, we got to do something about this. We got to do something about this. We got a lot of money on the table here, right? We've been paid billions by the government to do all this stuff, but the real money is the proprietary rights of the post-disclosure world, and that man is going after our proprietary rights. And so they, for the first time, the private sector openly, basically, decided we must go to war. And it took a few weeks before we got wind of it, but we started to get wind of it, and it was pretty clear. Right now, the press didn't go into details here, and they didn't press it because this was getting a little hot for them. But still, they covered it, right? But not in detail. They said, okay, we give millions and millions of dollars to the campaigns of certain key people in the House, most of which are Republican. Okay, Turner, Rogers, McConnell, particularly, right? And so you lobbyists, whatever the hell, you get up there, you go talk to them, have lunch in the dining room, and tell them if they don't take that eminent domain out or gut the bill entirely, they're never going to see another nickel. And so McConnell, Rogers, and Turner, I think, were the key players that basically met, after the work, right? Because they don't go all day long, with some dinner over drinks with some of the reconciliation people, and said, gut the bill. And that's what they did. But they didn't gut it all. They just took the powers away. And I think they might have gone for the whole bill, except the internet was on fire. The internet was pissed off because this is why they can't win, right?
Why
because
was
the
it
internet found out, and it was well known and on the internet that this bill was being attacked by the defense contractors to get to cut it down. And so it did get cut down. They took all the powers away, but they left the core bill. Okay, which was important. It's an important bill. There is an archive set up, an UAP archive now set up, the National Archives. There's actually stuff going in it. So, but there's no powers to really put the heat on them. And so, okay, that is a big deal because why?
Why? Yeah, why?
The defense contractors do not send people up in the hill to strip eminent domain of ET tech and ET bodies out if there's no ET tech and no ET bodies. And now Grush has confirmed it, Schumer's confirmed it, and the defense contractors have confirmed it. There's hardly anybody that hasn't confirmed that we have ET tech and ET bodies. But, you know, they're holding the line. They're feeling, we're making some progress here. It's okay. But they've outed themselves.
Yeah, but what progress did they make, Steve? They haven't really made a whole lot of progress.
Well, from where I see, they made a ton of progress, and I'm happy to address that.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I will. Well, first of all, the bill, the UAP Disclosure Act, can you imagine that being passed in 1964 or 78? And it's not just any bill. If you read the original bill with the powers, and it's up on the website, I have it. I certainly have it logged. It is everything. It's a turnkey piece of legislation that sets the basis for every single thing the U.S. government has and knows about the ET reality and the tech and everything else to come out of all the dark programs into a review process and ultimately end up in the National Archives and publicly known in an orderly way, to be responsible, with powers to ensure that those that don't want to play ball will have to. It's the whole package. And what they did was they left the core bill without the powers, which means that some things are happening. That's good move, good PR move. Okay, we didn't take that out. We're not evil. But right. Can you really get at the guts? No, you can't. But well, okay, so they had a little win. But that win cost a massive exposure across the entire internet, which the last time I checked was worldwide. And you can translate to almost any language, no matter where you go. All right. And so a little bit of a win. Okay. But, you know, it wasn't going to work out so well. So what happens, all right, is that they're sitting back and going, okay, we got it under control, and then boom. And again, it's not politics. I am not. You're
not convinced it's politics?
It's not. I may say it's not partisan. Okay, that's what I meant to say. It was all politics. This is a political matter.
Yeah,
it's not partisan. Schumer does something very important. Shortly after it was confirmed that the bill was written down, Schumer and Rounds go into the Senate to record a statement into the congressional record. Nobody was there but them. There might have been somebody cleaning up over on the side, but whatever. Mm-hmm. They do this all the time. And in that 7-minute or 8-minute thing, it's online, you can see it, he basically makes a couple of points. One, we're disappointed that the bill was cut back as it was. We're a little irritated with our Republican friends who led the charge on that, but we're not done. We're coming back on this, right? Because they can very easily. So then the people that are managing the issue and the defense contractors panicked. They said, oh God, you know, we let him have half the bill. Everything has been exposed. And now he's not done. He's going to keep coming at us on this. They really got panicked.
Yeah, and then they shut him down. Couldn't the intelligence agencies just shut him right down?
Well, I suppose they could murder him. But
Rush said there's people been murdered over this, right?
Yeah, well, they did murder him, and they can't shut him down. I mean, they can make a case or whatever, but overall, this is they're already losing, right? They're behind the curve at this point, but they're doing the best they can. And so, what they did, so they panicked, right? And that when you panic is when you make mistakes, and they made a big mistake.
What was the
and
mistake?
Here is what happened. They already knew that Kirkpatrick was very angry and upset. And the reason Kirkpatrick was angry and upset is because whether he knew it or not, when he got brought in to run Arrow, he was basically set up. He was screwed. All right. If he knew the game, that would have made it a little better. If he was misled, then it makes it pretty awful. And what is the game? Kirkpatrick wasn't supposed to come in to run Arrow to work real hard and find out what's going on up in the sky. They already know what's going on in the sky. It has nothing to do with proving anything. It has everything to do with existing, meaning we need to have an Arrow, needs to have a boss. And while we sort everything else out, just keep it cool, right? Because the president's going to have to disclose pretty soon, and we need to have Arrow in place. Not afterwards. We need to have it right now. And so we just kind of be cool. And whatever, they weren't doing much. Gillibrand was pissed off because they weren't getting much money because there wasn't much to do. It was a placeholder. Now, if he didn't know that, then I'm sure that he started to get a little worried. It's possible that when they set up Arrow, they didn't expect it would have to place hold so long, right? But it did. And so what's happening is that now he's getting all this pressure. Well, why don't you tell us this? And why didn't you get that? Why don't you do this? And what's going on? And that's the internet, by the way. And, most of the people that work, high-level positions in government, military, they don't know the internet. They shy away from it. And when they finally run into it, it drives them nuts. And so he's getting really upset. But he's hanging in.
Well, all right.
But then
Steve,
when Grush comes...
this. Hold on 1 second, because now you said something there. If they were all set up to, put Arrow in place and Kirkpatrick in place to, get disclosure done, right. Why does Kirkpatrick come out and says that we have no evidence? I mean, he comes right out and says there's no evidence of extraterrestrial.
I was about to tell you why.
All right, I'm sorry.
So this.
Shame on me.
History is tough, and getting things done is difficult. Right. The civil rights movement wasn't thrilled that Johnson was going to be the one to sign the damn act. But I'll tell you, you take the president you got. Right. So if he's going to sign it, you do it. So history is tough. So essentially, the problem that the government had, which it really didn't have until the To the Stars Academy came forward. And they realized, oh, my God, a bunch of pretty high level people have gone rogue. There's probably a bunch more behind them still working for us. It looks like this thing is now going to get really tough. All right. In any event, so the problem is how do they deal with these unfolding developments? What do they have to do? And I think a lot of people inside the government, including the managers of this issue, came to the right conclusion that the truth embargo was dead. It was dying. It was a dead policy walking. And it was only a matter of time before the president was going to have to disclose this.
Okay.
Or possibly another head of state would do it. And if it was Putin or Xi Jinping, that would be bad. And so we got to do something. Now, what is it they had to do? What you have to do is this. And the best way I can describe it is this way. Imagine you wake up on Monday, you turn on the news, and you discover that Vladimir Putin has held a major press conference at the Kremlin, brought a bunch of scientists in, right, and other things, and just confirmed to the entire world that we have non-human tech and non-human bodies here. Probably from the stars, et cetera, et cetera. And the Russian government will be telling you a lot more very soon. And that happens on Monday. What happens on Tuesday, unless everybody in Washington has gone completely brain dead, is that our president then comes forward and says, yeah, it's true. All right. If the president comes forward and says Putin is a liar, that will be one of the greatest mistakes in all of human history. But whatever. So we have to, it's disclosure time. It's happened. So now our president comes forward and acknowledges on Tuesday. But on Tuesday, with the world on fire and everything going on and millions of journalists piling into every office in Washington, D.C., and everybody on the internet going nuts, there's no Arrow. There's not 8 hearings. There's not a briefed Congress, right? There's no legislation. There's nothing. We're starting from scratch, right, in the post-disclosure world. That would be irresponsible. Squared. I mean, it's just so they had to prepare. In other words, they want our president to do it, but they're just not going to go to the president and say, "Look, on Tuesday, just tell everybody we're not alone, and we'll take it from there." No, you've got to prepare for this. What I think is the biggest event in human history. You need legislation. You need an informed Congress. You need an organization that's going to address it formally. Right?
Aren't they trying to do that now, Steve?
That's what they've been doing for 7 years now. But here's their problem. They had to do this, but the nature of the problem, the nature of the truth embargo, is they couldn't tell people why. So you can't say, look, we need to set up a group called Arrow, and I'm going to pass a bill. Why are you doing that, Madam Senator? Well, there's an extraterrestrial presence here. We need to have a group to deal with that. What do you mean there's an extraterrestrial presence? So they can't admit there's an extraterrestrial presence while they prepare for the announcement of an extraterrestrial presence. This is cognitive dissonance at a high level. Now, people on our field, like you and me and so others, we already know it's an extraterrestrial presence. So I'm not, I'm not concerned. I mean, I'm glad they're doing it. Other people are going, finally, you're going to tell us the truth. They don't get it. Now, I've done 400 interviews since this began back in 2017. And I've said this message over and over again so the average person could just understand. If it seems a little weird to you, right, that's because they got to catch 22 here, They got to set it up. You can't say why they're setting it up. but ultimately it ends well. Okay, fine. Now, does that mean it's going to be easy? No. And one of the weak points was Arrow and the director of Arrow. They had to set it up, but it had to have a director. And so when they bring in Kirkpatrick, he is not being brought in to finally resolve the ET issue or to get some real research going, like there hasn't been research for 70 years. Arrow has to have a director, and he was it. Now, did he know that the whole thing was basically preparation for an announcement that everybody, well, the key people already knew? Or did he understand he had to be a placeholder? It was going to be rough, but hang in there, Sean, because ultimately you're going to be the director of the organization addressing this issue in the post-disclosure world. You got to be famous. You're
so why didn't he stay?
Because it dragged on. You see, this is a contest going, a chess game, all right? And so there was some pushback, counter moves, and everything else, and so it was taking X amount of time. Now, it didn't help that we had a massive thing occur in the Middle East. It didn't help in 2022. Putin decides to take back the Russian Empire, whatever. This really screwed things up. It really made it difficult to push this issue. So it dragged on. It was always going to finish. So it's dragging on, and the longer it drags on, the more people are coming to Sean Kirkpatrick. What are you going to do? What about this? Why don't you say this? What's going on? He's getting trolled on the internet. He's getting attacked. These people that work in the national defense area, they're not used to being trolled on an internet. They get very upset with that. And so it's really pissing them off. And you can kind of tell. But he was hanging in there until June the 5th of 2023, when David Grush sits down and takes an oath in front of the Oversight Subcommittee. So when Grush, who was on the UAP task force before it became Arrow, who had to be, the total reason to be talking to people and had that information, when he decides to be a true whistleblower, not just a witness, he brings this out in the articles and then follows it up by testifying in front of the committee. Kirkpatrick was screwed, and he knew it. He knew that, my God, now that Grush has said that, the entire world is coming to me to confirm it or not confirm it or whatever the hell, and I can't do that. I'm in an impossible position.
Yeah,
right?
He's between a rock and a hard place.
And so this is offense, counter offense, and so forth. So what's happened in the situation with Grush, as well as the situation with the UAP Disclosure Act, is the opposition that has been winning for most of the 77 years is panicking and making mistakes, which is how you finally lose. Same thing in a prize fight. Get a little tired, get a little panic, let your guard down, boom, knock you out. And so now Grush is in an impossible position, and he made some unfortunate decisions. I'm not criticizing the man. I wouldn't want to be in the position.
What unfortunate decision did Grush make, though?
Right, not Grush, Kirkpatrick. I'm sorry, I said Rush, I meant Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick writes a nasty letter, publishes it about Grush, tries to attack him and undermine him. Big mistake, all right? Then his medical records turn up. We don't know who released the medical records, all right? But unless Kirkpatrick comes out and denies it flat out, it's very possible that he arranged for that. Blew up on him. Again, internet, okay? There was a time you could do that, canceled. But in the age of the internet jumped in on this, looked at it and said, you guys have got your head up your ass, and just really ripped it to pieces. And they're going, that shouldn't have done that, okay? And so finally he realizes this is impossible, and he says, I'm quitting. Okay, he's going to get out from under this. He gets promised a job, I think, at Energy Department, wherever. He's going to have a decent job. He's got a wife, he's got family, and that's fine. Again, I have nothing but empathy for the guy. All right, so, okay. So that's what he was doing. But, as I said before, Schumer had his own ideas.
Yeah, but let me just say this about Kirkpatrick. It was reported that Kirkpatrick wouldn't interview certain people that had knowledge.
Yeah, because
what's that?
he didn't want to. In other words,
why? No, why? I mean, that would have helped, wouldn't it?
It wouldn't have helped. Look, Arrow's job is not to confirm the ET presence; it's just to exist. And every time he interviews somebody or anything, and something comes in the door, everybody's going to want to know, what is it? What's going on? Have you talked about it? What is it? Tell us the truth. What's going on? The less he could do, the better. Perfect example. Bob Salas was able to go in and talk to Arrow for 2 solid hours about the shutdown of the nukes.
Right.
Never had a chance to do that before. He'd never talked to a member of Congress before until he and I were interviewed by Nancy Mace after the November 13th hearing. And so in that hearing of 2 hours, Bob says, look, are you going to pass this on to the Air Force? And they said, no. And, well, why? He says, the Air Force doesn't want to get anything about this. They don't want to hear about this. They're going to respond to this.
They've been lying for years.
What now?
They've been lying for years.
What? Oh, well, their history on this is particularly upsetting and grotesque, and they just don't want to deal with it. And then, so, okay, Bob said, well, I mean, that tells you a lot, doesn't it? All right, again, we're going to talk to you, Bob, but nothing's going to happen. You understand? And then Bob says, look, is there any NDAA attached to this? And they said, no. Now, you see how would you say not the ambivalence, but the cognitive dissonance here. These people, they in one level, they want disclosure as well. They know that the truth embargo is really not acceptable anymore. They know the damage it's doing. On the other hand, they have a job to do. They are working for the government and so forth, and so they're conflicted, right? So it's like, no, Bob, it's okay. So Bob has been telling a story, all over, that's fine. So that's one example. Others, they don't want to talk to at all. In other words, Arrow was stuck in an impossible situation. Kirkpatrick realized it, and he quits. But then, and this is why I mean they're in a can't-win situation.
Got a cushy job out of the deal.
No. Until you have the internet really after your ass, you don't want to say cushy job.
No. After he left Arrow, he got a cushy job.
Not before he did something else, you see. And this is what I'm talking about. This is the panic and the losing situation that they're in. Because after Grush testifies under oath, as we know, Schumer comes forward with the massive UAP disclosure bill.
Yeah.
Big time. All right. And that put him into a panic. So Kirkpatrick is still there. I don't know to what extent he was involved in the attack on the bill. But in any event, they finally had to run the bill to ground and cut it in half. Okay. Then Schumer comes forward, as I said before, and says, we're not done yet. And then they're sitting there and they're listening to Schumer, basically chide them and tell him, I'm not, and remember, he's still a very powerful man, right? And at the time, he was still the Senate Majority Leader. And they realized it had occurred to him, hopefully, a few of them, in their dining room while they're having a little lobster bisque. Oh my God, we made a bad chess move here. We could be mated in two. Now, what's the bad chess move? All right. Well, we gutted the bill. It's a win. All right. But then Schumer comes back and says he's going to do it again. And you see, the bill they gutted was because of reconciliation, because it was in the NDAA. There's nothing to stop Schumer from introducing a standalone bill, a standalone UAP Disclosure Act, forcing them to vote on it in the Senate and the House. Forget reconciliation. And all of those votes are going to be recorded, right, on a little screen, watching a screen, as the votes start counting. And every single person's vote is going to be logged in for history. And they're going, Jesus Christ, he could do that, right? He could do that. And then somebody else probably pointed out to him there, was sitting at the table going, it's also the case that there's no way we can stop Chuck Warner from holding a Senate Intel Committee hearing. Major, right? Pull those witnesses in. Big stuff. We can't stop that. So, essentially, we're kind of screwed. We've shown ourselves where we stepped out of cover. What are we going to do? And some genius came up with an idea. I know what we can do.
Okay, look, what's that?
1969, when they were up against the wall and NICAP was roaring and people were into the issue and everything was cooking, the government was really scared. They had this idea. They got this esteemed professor at the University of Colorado named Condon to put together another panel of old white guys, and they were going to do a nice study report with lots of pages in it. And it was going to conclude from the get-go that there was really nothing here, that nothing had been shown, nothing extraterrestrial, and we were wasting a lot of money. And then they took that report, shut down the 69 Blue Book, of course. And then, of course, they had CIA people on the board, known CIA people on the board of NICAP. They went and shut that down, blew it away, and they said, and they got 9 years. They got 10 years of kind of nice times, right? Until somebody found Jesse Marcel. And so they said, let's do that. Of course, it's not 1969, right? It's not 1969. And so they came up with not the Condon report, but the Arrow study report. And they needed somebody to sign it. And since Kirkpatrick hadn't left yet, I think they kind of went to him and said, John, we need you to sign this report. And if you don't sign it, that pussy job probably is not going to go away. You know, you might be, Baskin Robbins dishing out ice cream. And so he signs off an absolute disgrace. The Arrow study is a complete and total lie, but it's desperation. Now that chess move they made, the bad one, has now got them like 2 moves from mate. And so that all happens. 23, right? And then they move into 24. And what's happening now is while there's other moves that the activists, the disclosure activist movement could make, we're running out of time. Not only because we are in an election year, but we're in an election year like no other election year. And so the idea that you're going to ram through a major issue, each day we get into 24, it starts to just fade. And within a couple of months, there was no way they could do it. Okay, fine. Right? There's no way they can do it. I accept that. All right. And so it was going to pass on to the next president, who at that point was not determined yet. And so if you are the Democrats on the Intel Committee, if you are any Democrats involved in this issue, you're thinking, well, if Harris wins the election, it'll be a nice setup. We can move pretty quickly, and all glory to her and all glory to the Congress and the Democrats. Disclosure has happened. And so they basically didn't drive it. And I don't think they were going to. They couldn't, not in the political circumstances. And then they lose the election. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because it turns out that by losing that election, a guaranteed disclosure was going to happen fast. And so, how was that going to go? And here is why. A lot of things came together historically that made this possible, right? Put total partisan politics aside, just look at it cold, all right? What happens in the lead up to the election? Because the Democrats, being Democrats, want to do the right thing, but they're very cautious, a little timid, right? They tend to be, just a little too, careful. And
do the right thing with what, Stephen?
Yeah. Well, they want to do the right thing. Okay. So they couldn't engage this issue.
Well, this has been one hell of a fascinating history lecture. But the bottom line is, what is your opinion on whether Trump would be the disclosure president?
My opinion is he will be, and very soon, possibly within 4 or 5 weeks.
How will he circumvent the IC?
Well, here's how it's going to happen. The Republicans seized the high ground. They basically took this issue direct on in a way the Democrats never did. Not just any Republicans, extremely conservative MAGA Republicans took the issue head on. Burchett starts by going on one show after another and saying there's extraterrestrials here, right? He goes from a backbencher to being a world famous guy, and he gets nothing but great press and good emails. And so he has been pushing this issue. He then draws in, Mace and Luna and Burleson are watching this and they're going, yeah, that's working out pretty well for Tim. Let's get in. And the next thing you know, they're into it and they're saying things. And then they go ahead and hold the first hearing, right? Which, again, this is a Republican-led hearing on the UAP issue in the House Oversight Subcommittee, right? Major issue, got huge press. So now they are really ahead of the game. And they stay ahead of the game.
Here's a thought outside the box, okay? In my paper that I wrote, all right, and I had a lot of reason to say this. I talked to many, many people, especially a guy that was a friend of mine that has since unfortunately passed away, Ingo Swann, the guy that was the designed the protocols for the Stargate program, that at least some of these purported ETs are not very damned friendly. Okay, that's first and foremost. Not all of them. Okay, if there's one group here, probably 5, 6, or 7, and we're not even talking about the possibility of interdimensional, which is a whole brand new bailiwick, all right? Even Lou Elizondo told me personally a couple of years ago that there is a contingent within the Pentagon that sees this whole thing, and it might be the result of interdimensional travel, if that's true, as being demonic. But on the other hand, E.T. itself, I don't want to say him or herself, but itself, could end all of this 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
By announcing themselves. They're here for some purpose, for some reason, but they've never disclosed what or why or where they're doing what they're doing. And of course, the first thing that comes to my mind are all the people that have claimed to have been the victims of abduction. Okay, that's another bailiwick. Sure. And then you had people like Dave Jacobs running around saying that E.T. is down here to take us over from within by all these supposed hybrids being born. So, let's cut through the horse shit. What's the freaking bottom line?
The bottom line of all this is not going to be available to us or clear until we get confirmation of their presence.
We don't need it. My God, we've had all the confirmation we need. Back in 92, I broke 2 huge stories that, by the way, were confirmed. One involving a Soviet probe to Mars, Phobos 2, that was rammed, according to their own Glav Cosmos, by this huge thing that it encountered and photographed, and then STS-48, where somebody was shooting at bogeys in orbit. Okay? That was broadcast worldwide. We've had presidents. We've had Reagan. We've had Carter. We've had others that have discussed their own very own sightings and their attempts to get more information. Hey, you don't stonewall the commander-in-chief unless you've got a really damn good reason. And all of this has been bubbling to the surface, especially since December of 2017. Something happened then with Harry Reid, okay, and others, with the Nimitz battle group, that information being disclosed. Okay, people know there's something out there. So how much more, confirmation do we need?
Again, all right, let me be clear. Let me restate this. I believe that, well, I don't believe, that the presence of these ETs has been proven multiple times over. The proof is all over the place. It's been piled up for decades. That's what the citizen science research effort was basically about. We're going to work out of our own pocket, making a lot of sacrifice. We're going to do all the work the government apparently is not doing, and the universities are not doing, and we're going to show that this thing is real. And they did. And the government said, so what? So they proved it some more. And the government said, so what? And they proved it some more. And the government said, so what? In other words, the truth embargo was happy to allow y'all to do all the research you wanted and pile all the proof up you wanted. It didn't matter. It's almost the same as if the government were to come forward and say, look, we've looked, this quantum mechanic thing, total bullshit, right? Total nonsense. It's a conspiracy cooked up by some scientists to get paid a lot of money. There is no such thing as the quantum world. And people would think that's pretty ridiculous. But that's what the government did on this. And so the activist movement was not about proving it anymore. It had all been proven. The activist movement was about getting the government to formally confirm, yeah, it's real. Because until then, all we're going to do is keep going around in circles with more proof. When I say confirmation, it is in the sense of the definition that I brought out in 2001. Disclosure with a capital D is the formal confirmation by the heads of state of nations of an extraterrestrial presence, non-human advanced technology presence, engaging the human race. The formal confirmation. All right. And that's non-trivial. Okay. It's like, they embargoed this issue. They embargoed Cuba as well. Okay. Does that mean that you can't go to Cuba? No, you can try, but they can catch you and put you in jail. Right. And everybody understands that. Right. They formally embargoed Cuba. So therefore, I cannot go there. All right. And therefore, Cuba doesn't get my tourist money. Now, in this case, it's basically the same thing, except it's one level more complicated. It's like embargoing Cuba, but telling everybody there's no Cuba. So wait a minute, you're saying that there's nothing there, but we can't go where there's nothing there or whatever. It's like that. And so until they lift the embargo over Cuba, you can't go down there without any concerns and have a nice time. Until they lift the embargo on this issue, we're not going to get the public engagement money. We're not going to get the financing. We're not getting the full scientific engagement. We're not going to learn the rest of the truths, of which there are massive amounts. We're not going to be able to deal with whatever the issues that they oppose. We're going to be treated like children and told we don't have a need to know, a right to know, and we can't handle the truth. When in fact, it's the government that can't handle us knowing the truth. And so what governments do in a formal way is very, very important. They pass a law that says you can't cross the street in the middle of the block, and you do it, they send you to jail. So there's a whole lot of things we can't do because the government has not formally confirmed the ET presence. That is when the new paradigm begins. That's when things change. And my job is not to prove it. My job is to the government to confirm it. And what I'm saying is that confirmation is coming very closely. And I was just leaving the lead up of the history. All right. We weren't able, it wasn't going to happen in the Biden administration, so it'll get passed on to the next administration. And the question is, what was going to happen during that period? Well, here's what happened, right? In the first year of the Biden administration, I'm sorry, let me see if I get this right now. Leading into, right, the election. No, I'm sorry. 10 days after the election. That's why I get it right. 10 days after the election, when the new president is now the president-elect, Nancy Mace calls a second hearing. And she doesn't bring in basically a single witness rush. She brings in 4 witnesses covering a whole range of backgrounds. Elizondo, Gold, a journalist, Schellenberger, and Colladette, a very important witness, by the way, Admiral Colladette. And they give a broad range of testimony, very significant, but most people are wanting another Grush. They don't understand how significant that hearing was, because a broad range of testimony from people with multiple backgrounds is the kind of testimony that gets the attention of other politicians, scientists, and other high-level people. This is more substantive from their point of view. She holds that. Gillibrand, 6 days later, brings in Kozlowski and interviews him under oath, all right, and mentions that she had talked to him in a skiff ahead of time, which I noted, didn't have to, so she could ask tough questions and he could give her tough answers. And so now we're headed towards the election, the inauguration, right? Now I'm up on the Hill, okay? I was up on the Hill on the 13th, and after the hearing, I met with some people outside and ended up going up to Mace's office with Tyler Roberts, who was filming an interview with Bob Salas. And Bob Salas and I sat down on the couch. It's out on the internet. Go find it. And we talked for about 25 minutes. Prior to that, I talked with her privately for 30 minutes. And during that interview, Bob Salas, for the very first time, told a member of Congress about when the missiles were shut down at Malmstrom, and confirmed they were also shut down at Minot, 30 missiles, and I think 10 days, whatever the hell. And the fact that there have been other cases, and that he's never been able to testify except under my mock congressional hearing in 2013. And she listened very intently and ultimately stated, yes, I want those nuclear witnesses at the next hearing. That was on the 13th. All right, so things are moving along. Meanwhile, Burchett goes out in front of the cameras and says there's ETs again here. That's pretty big. But then, 3 days before the inauguration of the new president, I get a link in the email that says, you need to look at this. I go, okay, fine. And I put it up. It's a podcast. Okay, I get lots of links by that. But it's not just any podcast. It's a podcast led by Donald Trump Jr., who I didn't know had a podcast. And I think he has 1 million followers already. Not surprising.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
And who's he interviewing? Well, Elizondo and Ross Coulthard. Of course, Elizondo, one of the leaders of the Two Stars Academy, has been involved for 7 solid years, written a book with a film in the works, and Coulthard, the guy that broke the story on Grush, he interviews him for an hour and a half. And Elizondo and Coulthard are going, Don, your dad this, and Don, your dad that, and so forth. Do you think there's any chance that Don Jr. brought those gentlemen on for an hour and a half to talk about UFOs and disclosure, and his father didn't know it, or maybe even ask him to do it? It was Don that asked him about UFOs in his first term. This has been in play in the background all of this time. That doesn't mean that Trump is going to grab it. He had a lot of things on his plate, but let me be very clear. You can be sure that more than a few people have told President Trump that if he is the president to confirm this, quote, non-human advanced technology presence, it will be one of the greatest political legacies in all of history. And if there has ever been a president who would appreciate that, it would be Donald Trump. And it gets better because unlike the other presidents, he has put his people, not just a person, right? Maybe a qualified person into the key jobs, his people. And so this president has the most loyal Secretary of Defense, Director of the CIA, Director of the FBI, Director of the National Intelligence, Office of National Intelligence, than any president ever. And so he's not going to have any of them coming to him and say, Don, you probably shouldn't do this, right? No way. No. And so when you put all of this together, right? And then just for a little cherry on top of this pie, out of nowhere, not too many days ago, Comer, who is the chairman of the Oversight Committee, right? He's not the chairman of the subcommittee. That's Grossman, but Comer goes out of his way to announce that this committee is setting up, I think, the first of its kind task force on declassifying federal secrets. Now, think about that name. It covers everything theoretically. All right.
Which brings up a very interesting point. Yes. Not long ago, I have a very good friend who is a physicist, and we often have some wide-ranging discussions. And one of them involves what damned technology do we have, the United States, that has never seen the light of day? Yeah. For example, Ben Rich, we can take him home. All right. Now, that's one hell of an amazing statement. Or what's one of our biggest problems right now, today, not only in this country, but around the world? Energy. What about the technology demonstrated by ET, if that's who it is, okay? They don't get here on engines made in Detroit.
That's right. That's right.
What in the hell are they using? Is there such a thing as free energy or magnetism? I mean, one thing that many researchers have discovered over the years is that when these saucers are flying around, or these objects, I guess I should say, they often follow magnetic ley lines. Okay, what is the connection there? And what have we discovered there? And of course, the biggie, weaponry. That's always been the holy grail for the people at the Pentagon. Okay, new, better, more efficient ways to fry somebody. That's what the hell do they have there? So, Stephen, federal secrets, they have too much to lose, I think, if any of this is basically released to the public. My God, if we can go to the stars, are we going to the stars? Do we have a secret corps of astronauts that are out there right now flying around? I'm sure you've followed along over the years the ISS. The International Space Station, I've gone up there a number of times, and every time something mysterious seems to pass by the window, bingo, they lose the feed.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
They lose the feed.
Yeah.
So, we've been fed copious amounts of bullshit for a long time, and we're in the dark. And I'm afraid that dark is going to last a long time.
Well, all I could say is, don't be walking around in your underwear, because the lights could go on at any time. You see, you just listed one of 10,000 reasons why the truth embargo has to end. Well, I've had 78 years to work on that tech. So first of all, have we gotten an advantage from it? Not that we know. Corso said they maybe introduced a little bit of tech. Fine, maybe they did. I'm not over impressed with that. But really, the anti-gravitics, the energy systems, are we seeing that, Blake? No, we're not. And we never will until we get disclosure. But it gets worse because there are rumors. And again, I have to call them rumors because it's not established to me yet. That, but it's logical that several countries who have crashed vehicles, it's not like they just crashed in the United States. That would be kind of ridiculous. We are a very small country. The largest country in the world by landmass is, Russia. And when it was the Soviet Union, it was really large. And so there is a strong concern that there is a extraterrestrial technology weaponization race going on. And the reason that is so dangerous is because it cuts right into the heart of the mutual assured destruction scenario that we have been living by all of these years, which somehow has kept us from blowing ourselves to hell, which is, true, except it doesn't factor in accidents, and we've almost had several of those. So what I mean by cut into the heart, the number one thing most significant in terms of the nuclear weapons arms race and standoff is first strike. First strike means if you've got the ability to strike first, really first, so you can take out either X or 2X or 3X or 4X number of facilities before the other nation could respond, then that is a strong temptation. Let's just get this over with because they're going to win. And so they've been playing the first strike thing. That's why when about 2 years ago, we got all this information out about the Russians having some success with a hypersonic missile, the United States was kind of embarrassed because we admitted we didn't have that yet. Then China turns up with a hypersonic missile. Now, this could get even more interesting.
Well, we do have a shitload of nuclear submarines.
Of course we do, but hypersonic missile gets into first strike, okay? And so the irony is that maybe we have first strike capability, but it's based on ET tech, and therefore we can't acknowledge it. But first strike, you know what these saucers can do. You know how they maneuver. And so if you had a fleet of 100 of them, and they all had 10 MIRVs on them, and you could boom. Boy, that's a hell of a first strike. So is that going on? I don't know. And we'll never know until we end this embargo. And so what's at stake on the confirmation is just more than I can imagine.
Okay, I'd like to jump in here and ask you about the post-disclosure world.
Sure.
I come at this a little differently. I'm a pastor, and there's been a lot of talk about potential impacts to religion. You've explained tonight how the various political operatives are maneuvering and preparing for disclosure. Do you have any information about how the religious community or the Vatican or religious leaders are involved in preparing for a post-disclosure world?
Well, the person that knows the most about that and is actually engaging it through his organization, the New Paradigm Institute, is Danny Sheehan. And that engaging the religious aspects is a major part of their agenda. And they've got a major project in the works on that. And so he knows a lot about that. Okay. But let me add this. One of the advantages of the prolonged truth embargo, 78 years now, is that the religions of the world have had a lot of time to sort of see this coming. It's like the train. It's way down the track. You know it's coming, but you got a lot of time. And that's helpful. Right. So in the 78 years since Roswell, something like 600 sci-fi movies have been put up on the big screen. Most of them, few just streaming, whatever the hell, that had ETs in them. 600, generating more revenue for the film industry than any other genre. Maybe 100 billion, maybe $200 billion. And they're seen by mass audiences around the world, bringing in the highest gross films of all time, 1.5 billion, 2 billion, with ETs in them, of every conceivable type and manner. And there's more coming. So the idea of ET has been injected into the world. It's virtually universally known. It's hard to find somebody, unless they're on, I don't know, Sentinel Island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, that doesn't know in their own language what this thing is, okay? OVNI UFO. So that's happened. Now, religion overall has shown pretty accommodating face to this, led by the Catholic Church, which is way out in front of this issue for a number of reasons, and totally ready. The Catholic Church will jump on this issue immediately, talk about all its history on this, and probably get even more Catholics. The Asian religions don't care, right? Whatever happens, it happens. They're fine. They'll always be fine. The other major religion, 1 billion strong, are the Islamic faith. Islamic faith doesn't really have an objection there. The idea of unusual beings is part of their religion. The stress point there is the Islamic faith is in an extremely stressed situation, and therefore anything new is maybe a little difficult. But overall, intrinsic to that faith, not a problem. In the Protestant world, about 1 billion strong, overall, it's not so bad. But there is one area that is an issue, and I say this with full respect, and that is what we call very rigid evangelicals, whatever Protestant background, whatever Protestant base that is. These very strong evangelicals, these are the ones that their life is much more powerfully directly connected to their faith, what they think and what they do, and is central to their worldview. And they have indicated problems. They have clearly shown their concern, and it is a legitimate concern. But it's not like they don't know this is in play. That's not like they don't know it's coming. But it's possible that they will be the most uncomfortable in the post-disclosure world, which is why I invite those that are part of this issue and aware of what's going on. When the post-disclosure worlds come, let's walk into it with as much humility, as much grace, and as much empathy as possible. And
well,
so,
Stephen, those are the ones that consider, okay, the entire UFO UAP phenomenon to be demonic, and it's tough getting around that.
That's right. And they have exerted themselves a little bit. There is an evangelical group within the Department of Defense. It's been blown out of proportions, right? But there is a group, and whatever positions they may or may not have, they have voiced their concern. Okay. Yeah. Does that mean that the truth embargo is being run by evangelicals? No, it doesn't. But it is now. If you're a manager of the truth embargo, designed to keep this thing, classified forever, you grab onto anything you can. And so if there's a concern about from a particular religious group, you magnify it. If Margaret Mead makes a statement long ago about, cargo cults and everything else, you push that into that study that they did. Anything to try to push people away from engaging the issue. But
hey, Steve,
they can't anymore. Yes, sir.
Steve, we're down to our last minute. Folks that are interested in supporting you, what can they do?
ParadigmResearchGroup.org is now a 501c3 nonprofit, tax-deductible donations based in D.C. New Paradigm Institute is a 501c3, much bigger than me, 501c newparadigminstitute.org. You've got the Soul Foundation, Gary Nolan started, the science think tank out of Stanford, also 501c3. Support that. The UAP Disclosure Funds raised a lot of money out of, I think, San Francisco, is a 501c4. And other organizations are forming, literally. And almost all of the newer developments are not pre-disclosure, meaning let's prove it, but rather they're planning for the post-disclosure world. They're getting ready for the paradigm shift, as is Paradigm Research Group. And there's a lot of stuff happening I don't even know about yet, but it's coming out very fast. In other words, the game is almost over. We're about to walk across the line for better or for worse. Whatever lies on the other side of this paradigm is what it is, and we will deal with it as we always have. Whatever it is, we deal with it. We're humans. We're very clever. We're very able to adapt. All right. Am I too concerned? No, not really. I know a lot about the ETs, and I know a lot about human beings. And let me tell you, I am far more worried and afraid of human beings than I are them. Now, that's a bias, right? And I don't know everything, obviously. But if there is some awful thing at the end of this rainbow, all I can say is if the people in the government can handle that truth, by God, I can handle it, and you can handle it. And the idea that we don't know the truth of the world because we have to be little children protected by these people is simply no longer acceptable. And thanks to the internet and the podcast army and everything else, everybody's starting to figure that out. And I know they know they're losing. I'm hoping they will lose with grace and that we will accept the win with grace so that when we go into the post-disclosure world, which is where all this is heading, and the reason I do what I do, I knew there were ETs here when I was like 15. It was obvious, right? Just read a book. But that's not the same thing as moving into a post-disclosure arena. So I'm going to do what I can, and we'll do the best we can. You'll get more podcast viewers and more subscribers. It's going to be a great party. And if the ETs turn out that they're going to take us all over, I'll just say, hey, man, I could use a job. What can I do for you?
Well, we got to end right there, Steve. Thank you for coming on the show.
All right, guys. Don, appreciate your 45 years. You
all
worked
right,
hard.
well, that's our show for tonight, folks.
I'm sorry, Stephen.
That's our show for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it, and it's a wrap.